What's up guys, Hobo88 here, and welcome to my AMA or Ask Me Anything video. I posed the question to you guys last week, if you had any questions for me, to go ahead and ask, and I'd go through and answer them all. So that's what this video is all about. But before I start, just a quick announcement. I mentioned a spotter pack that would be coming available for iRacing. It's now in beta mode, so you guys can actually get that and start testing it and start using it. I'll put a link in the description below. So go ahead and get stuck into that. Hope you enjoy it. And while I'm going through and having a bit of a chat here and talking to you guys with some answers to your questions, you'll see in the background a few clips of videos from requests that people have asked me in the past that I just haven't been able to do for one reason or another. More often than not because the AI isn't suitable in rFactor, so they're mainly just some time trial laps in different combinations that people have asked for before. So keep an eye on that. Maybe your request will pop up. But let's go ahead and get started, get stuck straight into it. And I'm going to work my way through these questions from bottom to top, so oldest to newest. But let's start with the first one. Ryan Bow was the first to ask a question. He says he's been thinking about getting iRacing. Is it worth getting for a real life sprint car driver? I would say yes. If you're wanting to use it as a training aid, I think that it would be useful, but probably more so if you're actually going to run on any of the tracks that are in iRacing, which there's only a couple. But if you drive at somewhere like Eldora, something like that, you probably would find it useful. He says, do you use a wheel for racing and is it needed? It's not required in iRacing to have a wheel, but if you're planning on using it as a training tool, then absolutely you're going to need one. Is it realistic? I think it certainly is, and I can only speculate, but hearing what Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson and guys like that have had to say about iRacing, they all have said that it is very, very realistic. So you can only take what those guys say with a grain of salt, but I think if you're looking at by comparison to any other sprint car game or anything like that on the market, well, you don't have much to choose from. So it's going to be better than anything else out there, in my opinion. But I hope that helps. And then we'll move on to the next question from the Hado. Your favourite supercars driver? I think that my favourite supercars driver of the current batch of drivers that's driving is probably Craig Lowndes. Always have been a fan of his over the years, so I would have to say probably Craig Lowndes is my favourite current driver. He also asked my age. I'm currently 29 years old. I turned 30 in January. Future aspirations. I'd like to win some more championships. I assume you're talking about in sim racing, and I'd like to win some more championships and some big races. My biggest goal would probably be to win the Bathurst 1000, the V8 Scops Bathurst 1000, but whether or not that'll ever happen, I don't know. But aspirations, I don't know. There's probably not much there to talk about. I'm just doing it for fun, so that's all that matters. Next question comes from Leo M, and he's got quite a few here, but he asked for your favourite and least favourite driver in the V8 Supercars and why. So yeah, I've already talked about my favourite being Craig Lowndes. I've always been a fan of his. I think not only is he a super nice, likeable guy, but he's a fantastic race car driver. He's just got a natural style that is pretty rare, and he's great to watch. So, least favourite, I don't really like talking about that sort of thing, but if I had to pick someone, I've actually mentioned this before. Probably not a massive fan of Nick Burkhardt. He's better now than he was, but the way that he used to handle the media was pretty irritating to me, and that's not to say anything about him as a person, but the way that he used to deal with the media, especially in bad scenarios and situations, I wasn't a fan of. But he says, what's your favourite Bathurst 1000 as far as years go? There's been heaps of really good races recently, the last couple of years. Also maybe 2014, 2015, those years were fantastic races, and they were probably amongst my favourites. The best Bathurst 1000 for me was probably 1979. The win that Brock and Richards had in the A9X Tirana, 6 laps, fastest lap on the last lap of the race. A massive win, and I think that's probably the best Bathurst race in history if you'd ask me. Favorite road car on iRacing excluding the V8? That's a pretty tough question. Let's think, what is there? I actually do like the Mazda MX-5. I think iRacing did a great job with the new Mazda MX-5. As far as road cars go, that's probably one of them. I don't drive a lot of other road cars, so it's hard to sort of say. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any others at the minute that I like pretty much everything that I drive though. So you know, I haven't got too many that I don't like, so it is hard to pick probably a favourite. Definitely the V8 is my favourite. But also says, what's your take on the 2018 and 2019 rules for Virgin Australia supercars? Probably not informed enough to really have a solid opinion about it, so I'm not going to go ahead and say anything that'll make me sound stupid. Obviously the changes that are coming are significant. I think I'd rather just wait and see what pans out. Like the engine changes, I honestly don't think are going to make a massive difference to the sport as far as the competition goes, but what it means for the future for me personally is that it's not V8 supercars anymore, so it's the end of an era and a great era of racing as well. So I don't know, I'm open to see what happens. I just hope it doesn't ruin it, but only time will tell, I suppose. What do you drive in real life and what's your dream car? In real life I drive a Mitsubishi Triton, so it's like a four-wheel drive, or any of you guys in the States you probably call it a pickup truck. As for a dream car, I've got a few cars I'd really love to get. I'd love to get a 60s era pickup truck or something like that. I've also always had a liking for 57 Chevs in like a sedan layout, not necessarily a truck, but a 57 Chev. But if I had to pick a car, I'd probably say a really nice A9X Tirana or something like that. I've always grown up a Holden guy. My dad had Tiranas when he was younger, and I'd love to get one. They're pretty expensive, pretty hard to get these days, but that would probably be my dream car. What do you do for a living? He also asks. I'm actually a web developer by trade. I've got a background in graphic design. I've got some training in a few other areas as well, but my job as it is at the minute is actually a web developer. Next question comes from Venomous Frog. Have you ever thought about trying dirt racing in real life? I've always dreamed about doing it, and always wanted to as a kid. That was my dream as a kid, to grow up to be a race car driver. And a dirt race car driver would have been fine for me, but never has happened. So would I like to? Well, you know, I'm getting older now. I've got other stuff to worry about, but yeah, certainly would love to have been a race car driver. Absolutely. He's got a couple of other questions. Some big racing names for Australians in dirt. I think Tatnall is probably one of the guys that's most well known in the States as an Australian, but I think these days probably like a Veal, Jamie Veal or James McFadden, probably the biggest exports at the minute as far as drivers go from Australia. He says he's been wanting to watch some dirt racing in Australia, but doesn't even know where to start. Have a look at Play Per View. Just search that up. It's actually an online streaming service for, particularly I think it's for Parramatta, definitely in Sydney, but I think they do some races from a couple of the other tracks here in Australia as well, but it's probably your best bet. You can also look up Ash Media on YouTube. They do cover a fair bit of Australian racing, but not so much sprint cars, so you know, that might help you find somewhere to start with. I think that they'll ever put any of the tracks of Australian iRacing? The problem with that at the minute, I presume you're talking about dirt tracks because that's what you've been talking about everywhere else here. The problem at the minute is that in Australia we have short tracks, kind of like California. We don't have many long tracks, and we don't have any tracks here that have got infield pit areas, and iRacing has said for the time being that they only are going to scan tracks that have got infield pit areas, which I think will change because I'm pretty sure they've said that Kokomo and Melville are coming down the track, so they don't have infield pit areas. So I don't know. It's I think that eventually they will, but not for a while. I'm not expecting it to happen for at least a good year or two before you start seeing any Australian tracks perhaps being scanned at least. So I don't know. We'll see. We can only hope. I'd love to see it, but for the time being, I can't see it happening anytime soon. Dr. Carts 18 asks, are you going to come to the States? I wondered if you've ever wanted to come over. One day I hope to make it. I've always wanted to go to America for one reason or another. For a long time I wanted to head over there and do Canada and also do Whistler with some mountain biking, which I used to get into, but I've always wanted to do America for various reasons, but motorsport definitely one. The problem, it's expensive, it's a long way, and it's now difficult for me with a young family, so again, I can't see that happening anytime soon, but would absolutely love to, and I've always wanted to, and hopefully someday I will make it. I do plan to, but I'm just not sure when. OP Illusion says, been thinking about getting iRacing, but was wondering how much it would cost for all of the setup stuff, like a PC, wheels and pedals. I feel like it would cost at least $1,000 for everything. This is really subjective because it depends where you are. If you're in Australia, yes, it's going to cost you more than $1,000, I would think. You need a reasonable computer. You don't need an awesome one. If you're happy to deal with lower graphics quality and stuff like that, you can turn some of the settings down. But you know, if you're going to buy wheel and pedals, you're going to buy a PC, and then you're going to buy iRacing and the content itself. Yeah, $1,000, you know, probably will cost more than that once it's all said and done. You might be able to pick up a basic wheel for a couple $100 or something. You might be able to get a PC built if you know how to do it yourself, especially for, I don't know, depends where you are. You know, under 1,000 for sure. But you know, you start adding all that stuff up, and it does get a bit expensive. So you know, do the maths and check out iRacing for its system requirements. Figure out how much it's going to cost to build a computer wherever you are for that. If you're like me, you need to get the computer shop to build it for you because you know nothing about computers. It'll be a little bit more expensive, but yeah, it is. It's quite expensive, and it adds up. Maxman Manus asks, your favourite motorsport? This is a really hard question. I grew up around dirt tracks, and although when I was younger I never watched sprint cars when I was a kid much, they were never at the same track at the same time that I was with the class that I used to follow around with my parents. But I think that thrills per minute, sprint car racing is just so adrenaline packed, action packed, that it's probably my favourite to watch. It's hard for me because I've always grown up in and around touring cars as well. Obviously love Bathurst, so you know, it's kind of hard between the two, but I think thrills per minute, I would say that sprint car racing is probably my favourite. Austin Rogers, how much money does it usually take to get set up for iRacing? So I've kind of already covered that. Again, it's really subjective and it depends whereabouts you are. The exchange rates over here in Australia make everything expensive. K&N Cup Series asks, can I have all your dirt setups at iRacing? No. And do you watch NASCAR? Not so much anymore. I used to watch NASCAR, and in more recent years I've sort of watched a few races here and there. I usually watch the Daytona 500 and the road course races and a couple of others, but I used to watch every race a long time ago. But for me, especially this year, the stage racing thing, don't like it. I'm not massively thrilled by NASCAR right now. I don't know. It's also hard here in Australia because it's hard to get access to it. But yeah, I don't know. To answer your question, not really anymore. I watched Daytona this year and it's the only race I've watched. So, do I watch NASCAR? No, not really. Trevor Phillips asks, did Did you like the V8 Supercars race at Circuit of the Americas a few years ago? The honest answer to that is not really, but that's not so much because the V8 Supercars is the track. I'm not a big fan of that track, Circuit of the Americas, and I'm not a big fan of a lot of new modern Formula 1 tracks as well, and Grand Prix circuits. They have no character. I know there's a little bit of elevation at COTA, but it's uninspired to watch. The track is, sure, the track is probably quite good. I've driven it on iRacing and it's a challenging circuit as a driver is concerned, but from a spectator point of view, I'm not interested in watching a race at a track that just seems to be plonked in the middle of a big flat area. I much prefer watching races at tracks that have got a bit of geographic interest about them or something like that. Like, you know, you look at Bathurst and Mount Panorama, that track is incredible. It's on the side of a mountain. Like, you know, places that are more baked into the landscape, those sort of tracks, which are typically the older tracks, I really like. I'm not so big on the current man-made phase that's happening with new circuits, big runoff areas, and not much to look at. So I wasn't a massive fan of it just for that reason, to be honest. If they had picked a better track to have it at, I probably would have found it a lot more enjoyable. Even Watkins Glen on the boot, something like that would have been alright. Road America, Road Atlanta, somewhere like that, it would have been awesome. There's plenty of other tracks in the States as well that it could have been at. But yeah, the COTA for me just wasn't all that good. Sprint Car Fan 14, Kerry Madsen or Ian Madsen? If you had asked me this question a few years ago, I probably would have said Ian Madsen just because I didn't really like Kerry. I thought he was arrogant and a bit up himself, to be honest. But I've watched more World of Outlaws racing the last couple of years, and although he's not doing a lot in the World of Outlaws this year, having watched him a lot more, I think he's a lot more genuine than I thought. And there's no doubting that Kerry is a very, very good sprint car driver. They both are, but Kerry's quite successful and has been. And I think based on what he's achieved and what he's done, probably for Australian sprint cars in America, I think I probably would choose Kerry over Ian, but not by much. I think Ian seems like a really nice guy and obviously a talented driver as well. And that also, just going back to that question earlier on that we had about Australian drivers in America, I think the Madsen brothers are definitely some that need to be mentioned in that conversation, but I forgot about. Damien Parker says, what is your favourite class to drive? I'm going to go ahead and say this is probably dirt related, so that's how I'm going to answer it. What is my favourite class of dirt car? It's a tough question. I've always really loved the big block modifieds on R-Factor, but it kind of probably depends on the day that you ask me this question. At the minute, I'm kind of taken by late models. I think that they're awesome fun to drive on iRacing. That's probably what my favourite is at the moment to drive, is probably the big super late models on dirt on iRacing. What do we got? Who's next? Worcestershire Source. How do you ever control a dirt car you show on the channel? Looking to get good at dirt but just can't get the hang of it. Practice is probably the main thing. You need to practice a lot to be good. The one piece of advice I often give to people when it comes to the dirt stuff especially, and this is especially relevant in something like the sprint car, but keep your inputs minimal. Don't go jerking the wheel around left and right. Make your inputs smaller and deliberate. Be smooth and take it easy. The smoother you are, the faster you're going to go. So, you know, on and off the throttle a lot and backwards and forwards on the wheel is washing off speed. It's not going to be fast. You're much better to be smooth. So slow it all down, take it easy, work your way up. And that's probably what I would recommend to people when they're trying to learn how to go a little bit quicker. Drake Hartzell is next on the list. If you had enough people interested, would you host a dirt late model road race if possible? I don't even know if you can do a dirt late model road race. You can certainly do paved late model racing on road courses, and I can tell you right now that they are awesome fun to drive on the road course. But possibly do that as a hosted race down the track at some point. The problem with that, regardless of if you're using dirt or road late models, is that they're not free content, so you need to have people that already own the late model, and then you need to pick a road course that people have as well. So if there was enough interest in it, I'd possibly do it down the track. But for the time being, I'll probably not. But yeah, who knows? Maybe one day. Scott Wilkins says, "What Australian dirt track would you like to see on iRacing?" I'd like to see any Australian dirt track on iRacing, to be honest. But if I had to pick one, I would probably say my favourite track, which is Premier Speedway, SunGold Stadium in Warrnambool. It's my favourite track because it is close to home for me. It's a topic for debate amongst Australian dirt track fans, or any dirt track fans that are familiar with lots of places here. A lot of Sydney-siders are going to fight for Parramatta, saying that it's the best track, and then people from Perth will say that the Motorplex is the place to be. And then you got Murray Bridge, or Speedway City in Adelaide. So Brisbane's got tracks as well. There's a lot of really good Australian tracks, and I think that they're all really quite good. All the ones I just listed are very, very good tracks. But I've got a personal attachment to Premier Speedway in Warrnambool, so that would be the track that I'd say I'd love to see come across. GTL Racing. Let's see. Question: V8s on iRacing. Finding that speed is more to do with lines and gear selection than setup. That's got a question mark. If that's the question, I think that yes, you will find more time learning how to drive the car fast than you will from having a rocket setup. Just because you got a good setup will not mean that you're fast in the V8 Supercar on iRacing. Absolutely, definitely the case. Do you reckon Automobilista V8 Supercars is handy practice or would hinder driving back in iRacing? So this is an interesting question. Any time that you can get in a simulator turning laps, I think is a benefit. But the V8s are quite different between Automobilista and iRacing. So it could be quite difficult to go backwards and forwards between the two. And the other thing is that although you can get a lot of the same tracks in Automobilista, they are different because they're not laser scanned. So you only have to look at Bathurst on iRacing and then Bathurst in any other sim ever to see that in every other sim ever, it's actually not that accurate. So you could be teaching yourself more bad habits than good. If you've got access to both and you want to be good at the iRacing V8 Supercar, I would suggest just practice in the iRacing V8 Supercar. But I'm also a massive fan of Automobilista, so if you're wanting to just have fun, Automobilista is a great place to go. But I think that any time you spend in a simulator is definitely only going to help. It's not going to make you worse. Brendan Burns is next. He says, could you do some videos on dirt and how to run each car? I do a lot of videos in all the cars, so I would suggest just keeping an eye out and watching the ones that I post. I know I don't talk about how to be fast in those, but you probably learn a lot just from watching and paying attention to the inputs, especially. So the steering and throttle, brake inputs, things like that, are going to teach you more than anything. I could rabbit on and talk about my opinions on how to drive those cars, but the reality of it is I'm probably not that good. I'm probably not really someone who should be giving instructions on how to do it, because I'm not the fastest out there and I'm not probably teaching good habits. But I'd suggest if you're wanting to learn and you think that I can help, just pay attention to what I'm doing in the videos that I post, and that will hopefully help you out a little bit. That'll give you a bit of an idea for lines. But yeah, where I think you probably learn the most is paying close attention to the steering inputs and the throttle inputs especially, so you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully that helps you. Nick Ventura asks, what's your wheel and setup? As far as my PC goes for setup, all the specs are actually listed on the About page of the channel, so go ahead and take a look at that if you're wanting to see what my actual computer specs are like. But for my wheel, I just have a completely stock and basic Logitech G27. Budget sim racer is the best way to explain me. I've got a very simple setup, nothing fancy here. So yeah, I've gone as cheap and nasty as you can go, basically. I've bought a budget-ish machine that's powerful enough to run everything at good quality and record. The cheapest steering wheel combo that I could find at the time that had 900 degrees of rotation and a clutch and H-pattern shifter. I've got an office chair and a wooden desk that's really falling over and a single 27-inch screen. It's very, very basic. That's my setup. So you don't need to have the best gear to be the best driver. A lot of the time, the best drivers in the world are running on very basic gear. So probably don't get as much out of it as you would if you had a full motion simulator or VR or something like that, but certainly can be competitive with basic setup. Chase Gaming asks, what's your favourite track? That's an open question because there's dirt and tarmac to be taken into account. Although really, all things said and done, it doesn't matter because I can give you an answer to that. And my favourite track of all time is Mount Panorama at Bathurst. I can't imagine a better piece of racing track ever. It's probably hard for someone who isn't Australian, who doesn't have much knowledge of the track, who hasn't been brought up around that track, to understand just how special it is. The history that goes with Bathurst is what makes Bathurst so good. So, you know, if you're not an Australian, I completely understand if you don't get why I say that. But for me, Mount Panorama is by far and away the best racetrack in the world. It's just my opinion, but that's my opinion. So there you go. Harry Stewart is next on the list. He says, would you ever consider doing retro games like World of Outlaws 2002? You guys have seen my channel and you've seen how many hours I've spent in iRacing and stuff like that. I probably spent twice as much time playing World of Outlaws 2002 on my old PS2. I just about burnt the disc into the PlayStation. Like, it was I think that my PlayStation could probably play that game without the disc in it because it's been run so many times. And I still have my PS2 and I do still have that game and I still do play it occasionally. But will I put it on the channel? Maybe one day. I don't have a setup at the minute to capture the input from an old PlayStation or anything like that. But you know, maybe one day. But I think in the meantime I'm better off just focusing on current racing sims. But absolutely one of the greatest dirt track games ever made. That Rat Bag game is incredible, no doubt about it. Lewis DeForges says, any reason why you prefer dirt racing over oval racing? I probably don't necessarily prefer dirt racing over road racing. I may have got that question wrong when I read it out. Do I prefer dirt over road? I don't necessarily prefer dirt racing over road racing. I'm a massive fan of V8 supercars, obviously, but there's a big wide world of road racing out there. You look at all your GT cars, prototypes, all that sort of stuff. I know I don't ever talk about it here on the channel. I do watch some of that stuff, but not. I don't ever do videos on it hardly at all, and that's probably because it's just too hard to be good at everything. I enjoy the V8. I enjoy my dirt racing, and it's too hard to be good at, you know, driving a prototype or a GT car as well. But I like dirt racing. I like how action-packed it is. I like how dynamic it is, especially in iRacing now with the dynamic tracks. No two laps are ever necessarily the same. I don't know. That's probably the best answer I can give you, to be honest. But it's not to say that I don't like road racing. I just want to make that clear. Formula 1 irritates me just because of the way that the competition is in that and how it's all money, basically. But I do still enjoy Formula 1. I've even watched a little bit of Formula E. I'll watch pretty much anything. And I do love road racing. I love endurance racing. But I just don't talk about it much, and I don't ever race it much just because it's just too hard. There's too much stuff out there. I can't do it all. Sean Roberts says, could you tell us how to decide on what adjustments to make on the 410 wing sprint when racing on different track types and surfaces throughout qualifying to the race? I probably can't, and that's because I really need to work on this myself, because I don't really do anything with setups in any car that I drive. The V8 is probably the one I've got the most knowledge in, but I actually need to work on this myself, because I basically load a setup and that's it. I change the fuel level depending on how many laps I've got to do. That's more or less it. On the wing sprint, I'll work on the wing a little. I'll pull it back when it gets the track gets slick and I need a little bit extra grip. Pull the wing back, give it a bit more downforce over the rear tyres, a bit more grip. Very rarely will make any other changes, to be honest. So whatever I load up for time trials is usually what I end up running in the feature, more or less. But it shouldn't be, and that's probably why I'm not as good as I need to be, because I don't do that. So that's somewhere where I need to improve. Wolfpack 002 says, out of every car on iRacing, what is your favourite? It's really hard because I love all the dirt cars. I think they're amazing, but I think really and truly the V8 Supercar is probably my favourite. Any chance you'll do some IndyCar races, says Zach Gardner. Probably not. I have done a couple of IndyCar races before. I think you'll find them on the channel, but nothing serious. They're just some fun races. I don't own the current IndyCar on iRacing. I don't own a lot of the ovals is the other problem. I know the IndyCar runs on road and oval, but I don't own many of the ovals on iRacing. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about the different varying road racing series out there. I enjoy them. I've never really watched IndyCars, to be fair, but it's not to say I wouldn't enjoy racing them. But it's just too hard to be good at everything. And I know you don't have to be good at everything, but I'd have to spend time learning the car, learning how to drive it competent and not wreck everybody. They're complicated cars to drive as well. I'm a pretty simple person. Got to worry about weight jackers and all sorts of stuff. Get the car right in traffic and dirty air, and there's a lot of things to think about. I'd rather a stock car. Give me a NASCAR where I don't have to change anything. Just drive it as fast as you can and hold on. The IndyCar's probably a little bit too smart for someone like me, but you know, for that reason, probably not. You might see me do one here and there, but not on any sort of frequent, regular basis. That's for sure. Assassin Dark 24. He says, do you think iRacing will add big blocks and the crate modifieds like R Factor? iRacing has scanned a UMP modified, I think it is, already, and it should be coming down the pipeline sometime soon. But in answer to your question about all sorts of different things, it's not just these cars. Like, I think we're going to see them. I think we're going to see, big blocks. We're going to see midgets. We're going to see a heap of stuff come to iRacing with time. The problem with iRacing is it's just fairly slow. Like, it takes them a long time to launch stuff. But yes, I think that those would be coming down the track. And number two, have you ever thought about coming to the States to run in a dirt series? Not to run in a series. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but above all else, financially, it's hard just to even get time to come and do a holiday over there, let alone go and actually race in something. It's expensive, and I don't know if I really want to be going overseas and then risking my health to race in a series over there. When I could do it here. If I really was that inclined that I wanted to get in a car and race something, I'd probably do it here rather than over there. But again, it's not to say that I wouldn't like to, because that would be awesome. I'd love to run in anything that anyone would let me drive in, to be honest. But no, I haven't really ever thought about doing it, and I don't ever see it happening. That was Assassin Dark 24. Sprint Car Fan 14 asks, favourite World of Outlaws sprint car driver? My favourite World of Outlaws driver right now, based on current guys that are full-time drivers, who would it be? Trying to think of all the guys that run full-time. I think Hordenshield. I think it has to be. He's so much like his dad, and I love how aggressive he is. He's so much fun to watch. I think he's probably the most exciting driver to watch, and it's only a matter of time till he becomes one of the all-time great drivers. He's already making a name for himself, and it's a shame that he has to live under the shadow of his old man, because really, You know, Jack Hordenchild is a massive name, and it's hard to not be known as his son, I suppose. But without a doubt, his driving is speaking for itself. I know he drives a lot like his dad, but he's making his own name for himself as a driver, and I think that he's probably my favourite World of Outlaws driver at the moment, who's on a full-time schedule. Battlefield fan asks, do you watch any live sprint car races like the Classic, Oz Title, World Series? I watch the Classic every year. I watch several events. I'm from a town called Geelong. Avalon Speedway is my local track. I go to as many events there as I can. And I usually go to Premier at least a few times a year. Try and catch the Easter Trail at least in Avalon and at Premier if I can. As far as World Series goes, they do come here and I try and make the event. I usually try and make the January 1st meet at Premier Speedway, but that just depends on family and work as to whether or not that happens. I'd love to do them all, I would, but I don't know if I'll make the Australian title this year. I think it's in Mount Gambier if I remember correctly. Another great track, but it is a fair drive from here, so I don't know if I'll make it to that. But I'll definitely be doing the Classic, do that every year. That's at Premier Speedway for those that don't know. But I'll make it to as many as I can. It's expensive to go to a lot of racing, so you know, sometimes you've got to pick and choose, but I'll make it as often as I can. Pure Rush Racing League asks, any tips for someone new to dirt on R-Factor? Dirt on R-Factor is tricky because it's not so plug and play like it is on iRacing. The trick with R-Factor is to just trial and error, make sure that you've got the wheel or whatever you're using as a controller set up right for each car, because often you'll find that you have to tweak or change the steering or bits and pieces to suit the car that you're driving. Make sure that you've got your range of motion on your wheel, so your rotation limit. I set mine to about 270 degrees for everything in R-Factor. You also need to make sure that you've got your assists, all the assists turned off, but other than that, just practice, really. That's all I can suggest. Zach Jones says, did you ever watch Marcus Ambrose when he drove in NASCAR? Yes, that was back when I used to watch NASCAR all the time. I watched most weeks when Marcus was racing over there. If so, what do you think of him? Marcus Ambrose is funny because here he was a Ford driver. I'm a Holden fan, and over here you bleed red or you bleed blue depending on if you're a Holden or a Ford fan. Anyone who's not an Australian won't understand it, but anyone that is will know all about it. So he came here left here as a Ford man and a very successful driver in a Ford. Obviously as a Holden fan there's like a rivalry there that always rubbed me the wrong way. Marcus, I think, is an extremely good race car driver, an extremely likeable person, and I think he was an exceptional driver. He did a great job getting his way across there and doing a good job in NASCAR. He made a name for himself, obviously as a road course driver where he was extremely good, but he eventually did find his way on the ovals as well, and I think he did Australians proud as a driver over there. You know, I think that he was a very, very successful driver, and I like him as a person as well. So, you know, I thought he did a great job. He also asks, not really for you specifically, but what made sprint car racing so popular in Australia? Probably the exact same thing that made it popular everywhere. It's exciting, it's fast, it's loud. You know, it's all the good things crowds come to watch. So, I think that's a pretty fair answer. Teddy Malinowski asks, I'm curious as to what you do for a living. I've already talked about that. I do web design, web developing for a full-time job. Ben Cartmad9 asks, I'd love to know a little bit more about you outside of sim racing. I'm not trying to be a stalker, but just love to know more about you. So yeah, I've already sort of said 29, live in Australia. Web developer by trade, married, one kid. There's not much more to tell. That's pretty much it. That's all you need to know. Yes, it says a face reveal would be cool too, just to put a face and a voice, a face to the voice or a name. Nah, not at the minute. face reveal's not happening for the time being. I don't want you guys to all unsubscribe, so you can probably find pictures of me on my Twitter or something like that, or if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be able to see pictures of me. Let's see. I'm a super flying ace says, could you do third-person highlights at the end of your videos? There's parts in some of the races that would be cool to see in third person, like how you show in the time trials. The only thing I think third person is good for on a replay is to show a line that you're holding compared to another driver if there's a contact made to see who was at fault. But I don't really want to do it that way because for me, sim racing is about the realism, and a third person camera is not realistic. Can't have a drone or something, I guess, flying along behind the car, but it's not realistic, so that's why I don't tend to include it. Same reason why I don't ever do chase cam footage or third person cameras and stuff at all. It's always onboard helmet camera, because for me sim racing is all about the realism. Super racing, if you got to go to one dirt oval event anywhere in the world, where would you go? I think I'd probably have to say Knoxville Nationals. Obviously enormously famous race, arguably the biggest race of the year for any dirt track fan or sprint car driver, and it's a bucket list sort of item for me. I'd love to go there just once to see what it's all about and experience it in person. Trevor Massetti says, would be cool to do a wheel setup video. Well, I've already talked about the setup I've got in my wheel. It's as inspiring as it sounds. It's really not a very good setup, and it's not really worth showing you guys, which is why I haven't done it. If I had a real cool simulator, full cockpit and everything set up, I'd be more inclined to do it, but because my setup isn't very good, it's not worth it. I can tell you guys what it is, and you can use your imagination, but it's nothing exciting, so maybe one day if I get a better setup. But anyway, what do we got? Untie Low asks, what do you do for a job? I've already answered that one. Oh well, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy flashing your headlights on a starting grid? I've seen you do that before. Honestly, when it comes to the flashing lights in iRacing, I don't even have a button set up for it. I think it's a waste of time. I don't notice it in my mirror when someone does it behind me. It doesn't affect me at all, so I don't even bother. The flashing of lights thing for me, not even bothering with it, to be honest. I don't have a button map for it, whatever the default is, probably. Thomas McMillan asks, if you had to make a list of the top 5 aliens in the Oz NZ community, who would be on the list? That's a really hard question. It's hard for a few reasons. One is because I've only got limited exposure into the community. I'm a V8 supercar driver, first and foremost, in the Oz NZ community. I've done a bit with the dirt stuff, but the dirt stuff's very even. Although there's quite a few guys, there are a couple of guys right at the front that are very, very fast. There's quite a few that are very close to each other. I'm not one of them. But there's a sort of a handful of guys that I know of that are very, very fast on dirt. I'd be inclined, if you're talking about aliens, to talk more about the few guys that run right at the front in the V8 supercars, likes of Josh Rogers, Jared Filsell, Madison Down. But I think once you get beyond that, you start to get into a bit of vague territory, because there's sort of like a top tier there with those guys, and then there's like the next tier down where you get a heap of guys that are, able to throw their hat into the ring. I think Jake Burton's made a real statement about his abilities the last 12 months. He's someone who stepped right up at the top. Ethan Grigolt's a good driver in the V8 supercar, although this year he's been a little bit more human than perhaps last year. Ian Ford on his day can be as good as anyone. There's a lot of guys up there, but the thing is for me that it's the 3 that I've already sort of mentioned, especially Filsell and Rogers, are the guys that, regardless of where you are, what the conditions or the circumstances, they're the 2 that are at the front. They're the fastest guys there are. So I think that, for me, it's hard to do a top 5 list, because although I could probably pick at it maybe 3 or 4 maybe at the top, then you get any number of guys that can throw their hat into the ring. Forzen El Nabi's very fast on his day. Dane Warren's proving to be very quick in it, but to pick 5 specifically, I think that's a bit hard to do. Scotty G, Robbo, can you teach me to be as awesome as you? Something that can't be taught, I think. I'm not that awesome. I don't know why you think I am. Blake Durson, what state are you from in Australia? I live in Victoria. Live in Geelong, Victoria. Aiden Fry asks, can you do a setup tour? I've already answered that one. Not for now, maybe down the track. Jared Nash, will you ever consider starting your own league with dirt or other available series within iRacing? Probably not, because I enjoy racing too much. I do feel like I could do some great things with running a series. I've got ideas on what would be good for running a series, and I also think that I'll be quite good at doing broadcasting for stuff as well, except that my internet's not there. But, the thing for me is, even having just run a couple of small one-off events for this channel, the amount of stress involved just it isn't worth it. It's too hard, and you can't enjoy it. You can't actually participate and enjoy it when you're trying to run it. So for me, the answer on that one is probably no. QStick333 says, I'm sure that I see some change visually in the dirt tracks as your races go on, but does the track actually change from a driving perspective throughout the race? Who sets it, how it will start? So any of the hosted leagues that you run, the person that's running the show can pick the starting state of the track, so you can set it all the way from 0% to 100%, which is completely slicked off. Does it change across the track? Absolutely. And it's not just dirt as well, the same thing on road courses. But if you put 20 cars on a track and you put them around for 30 laps each, you're going to go from a track that's completely tacky and sticky to completely black and slick in that time. It actually does change almost every lap. Just like it would in real life, it's exactly the same. It visually looks different, but it physically becomes different to drive on as well. Absolutely. Matthias Cavino says, how would you rate the three big sims of the market, iRacing, Assetto Corsa and rFactor 2, plus Automobilista and Race Room, in weakness and strong points for each one? I'm not the best person to ask about this because I don't even have access to a couple of these. I've got iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and Automobilista, but I don't even have rFactor 2 or Race Room. Not to say that I don't want to or not interested in it, but it's just time and money. I don't have time to race in everything. I already don't use Assetto Corsa hardly at all. The knowledge that I do have, the strengths of them, iRacing is its competition and its attention to detail, I would say. Like the laser scanning of everything is a big deal. The level of detail they go into and their physics and everything is quite deep. Visually, it's probably not the best looking iRacing, but they are getting quite good. It's quite good. But it's the competition, the fact you can race against all the people you can just so easily, and the competition's so strong. There's a fault system, so licenses and stuff are all relevant. That's what makes iRacing so strong. Assetto Corsa is good because it's got high graphic detail, but it's also very, very flexible for modders, so you get a wide range of content through modding. Automobilista is the same, but its biggest strength for me is probably the physics. The physics in that game are awesome. It's built off the rFactor engine, so graphics are poor, but modders are able to do great things with that game, and the guys at Reza Studios have done a great job with that as well. As far as Race Room goes, I can't really speak to it, and same with rFactor 2, so that's why I can't really answer that question at its fullest, but that's probably my answer to what I can answer with that. I hope that sort of answers your questions for you. Timmy Brown, what kind of PC do you use? I use a white one. I don't really know anything about PCs, so if you're looking for the info, I think I mentioned it before, all the specs are listed on the About page of the channel. Lance Bainton says, help with the sprint car setup please. For the different tracks, hard to get help online. I know it is hard to get help online. I got help from a few guys when I was struggling with the sprint car, so I can't really give out like setup information because they're not mine to give out, but it's really hard. Like, I can't just sit here and say that the baseline setup is good enough because I needed help to be able to go fast enough to beat the guys that I was racing against, but at the same time, the baseline setup is going to be good enough to beat 90% of people as well. So, you know, trial and error is probably a great place to start, but you need to be patient. You need to be able to be consistent for you to be able to make setup changes. It's no good if you can't do 2 laps the same to be able to know then what a setup change actually does. So I'm not really the best person to ask this stuff because I'm a bit lazy and I don't really understand enough about setups as it is. A lot of you guys think that I'm a bit of a wizard or something when it comes to this stuff, but the truth behind it is I don't know much about it. I load a setup and go. I don't think about it very often. I don't even do setups in rFactor at all. The only car that I ever do any setup work in is the V8 Supercar, and even then it's just a monkey clicking buttons. Like, I really don't know that much about it, to be honest, so probably can't help you too much. My knowledge isn't that strong, and I'm just lucky I've got guys around me that can feed me good setups, but subsequently I can't just palm them off, and I can't explain them because I don't know enough about them, so I can't really help you too much there. Sorry about that, Lance. Thomas Gaming and Racing asks, how do you record your videos? I use OBS to capture all my videos. I use Premiere Pro to edit them. Jack Barrett, have you got a project car? I'm guessing that question doesn't mean do you have project cars? I do have project cars as well, but I don't ever play it. Have I got a project car? No. I know less about cars than I know about computers, to be all things honest here. I love cars, I love motorsport, I don't know much about them. In the past I've done basic servicing and stuff on my car, but I just don't know enough about them to build one. And I don't have time, to be honest. So, no, I don't have a project car is the answer to the question. How do you get your car set up the right way so you can actually compete with the competition during races? By Hunter Fowl. I'm guessing that this one's relating to dirt as well, and I've already sort of answered that. The only adjustments that you make on the sprint car while you're driving is with the wing, because it's about all you can do. I'm not sure that there's really much else you can do on the other dirt cars while you're driving. You know, you can make some tweaks and changes with staggers and stuff like that to chase a track as it wears out. But when you're actually on the track, which is probably more so what you're asking here, during races, the only things you can really tweak on is, above all else, when it comes to dirt, your actual driving, your line. So it's not so much setups, it's more about your driving styles, chasing the track. But the wing is pretty important in the sprint car if you're wanting to tweak it, get some extra speed out of it across a long race where the track's going away. When it comes to V8 Supercar, it's much the same, but the roll bar, I make changes on the ARB in the V8 Supercar. The general gist of it is coming down on the bars, going to make it softer, give you more grip as the tyres go away, generally speaking. And it seems to work, but that's the basics of it. Wartime Gaming asks, how the fudge did you get a 208 on an outlap at Bathurst? Still baffles me. Wouldn't have been an outlap because you'd have to trundle down the pit lane, but I'm guessing you mean off a standing start or something. But conditions were probably perfect for that one. 208's a pretty good lap around Bathurst as it is, let alone from a standing start. But Bathurst is a really tough track, and you have to be 100% committed to be fast there, and the only way to get there is to practice a lot. That's all I can say about Bathurst, to be honest, V8. Mr. Mabini asks, what do you think of V8 Supercars 3? I had to confirm that this was the old PlayStation game that they were talking about. They said it's not that old. I don't know how old that game is. It must be 10 years old by now, I'd say. But anyway, what do I think of it? I always was a big console gamer. Grew up on the V8 Supercars, Toka, Colin McRae, games, all that sort of stuff. And V8 Supercars 3, I definitely had it. I thought it was awesome. The thing that I remember from that game, I think it was that game, someone might be able to point me out if I'm wrong, but one of the things I really liked about that was the first thing I did is jumped in the V8 Supercar at Adelaide, I think it would have been, and the different camera options you had for that game. What I loved about it was I think it had the dash camera almost, where the camera sat very close to the bottom left hand corner of the windscreen on the car, the V8, and I loved it. It's probably the first time I'd seen that particular shot as a camera option. because most of those games didn't give you like a ability to move the cameras around, and I love that. That was that first taste of sim type camera positioning for me, I think, in that game. That's what I remember about it the most. It's no, a very good game. I haven't played it in a long time, but no, a very good game all the same. And the last question I've got here, I think, let me just check. Yep, Duck Hunter Boy, yay. Do you have any in real life dirt track experience? Unless you're talking about sitting on the other side of the fence and watching, no, I don't. Never been inside the catch fence at the dirt track of any kind. I've been on the infield before, but that doesn't count either. I've never raced a car, a dirt track car. I've never raced in real life at all. The exception being some go-karts and a couple of like bad supercar drive experiences and a rally car experience, same sort of thing. But no, never raced at all, never competed at all in any form of race car, let alone a dirt track one. So no real life experience at all. All the stuff that I do is all just from gaming. It's the only experience I've got. But that looks like it's it. That's all the questions I've got. I'm sorry if I missed anyone or anything like that, but that's quite a lot. That's enough for now. That's an hour's worth of video. So thanks to you guys for getting involved and posting so many questions. I was surprised by how many there were, to be honest, and I really appreciate it. But thanks very much to all you guys for getting involved. I hope that the video is what you guys wanted it to be. I hope you learnt a little bit more about me and my setup, because I don't want to be just some celebrity YouTube guy that you guys all think is some mythical hero or something like that, because I'm not. I'm just the same as everyone else, and I only do it for fun. That's why I do it, and I'm just the same as all you guys. I'm not some hero or anything like that, some untouchable. I'm just the same as everyone else. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I know I did something a bit different for the channel, and you know, maybe one day we'll do it again down the track. But for now, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.